All right, everybody. I think we got to talk a little bit about this one because people are going to be asking about it. People are going to be talking about it. People are going to be wondering what I think about it in some cases. So let's go ahead and just get to that big ol' elephant in the room. Just about 10, 15 minutes ago, we got the breaking news, although it's not really breaking news because it was very obvious this is where we were going. But nevertheless, we got it officially, finally, per Rappaport, Schefter, and the usual crew. The Broncos are moving on from quarterback Russell Wilson. So officially, he will not be released until March 13th because that's when the league year starts. So they can't actually release him yet, I guess. Aaron Wilson's got that here. But they've told him that they are going to be moving on from him. They've informed him that he will be released when the league year starts. I'm assuming that means that he can start the process of finding a new landing spot. I'm assuming that means that teams can talk to him as if he is a free agent, which is why you do it now rather than later. But yeah, it's officially over, and Russell Wilson will officially be looking for a new home, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making this video, because obviously this doesn't really have very much to do with us, because I'm not a Denver Broncos fan. This is not a Denver Broncos channel. But the part of this that I don't want to forget is that this is still one of our most legendary players ever. This is still our most successful quarterback ever. And watching what has happened in his career since leaving Seattle is still of interest to us. Regardless of what you think about him, he was an indelible part of the Seahawks organization for a decade. He started almost every game at quarterback for the Seahawks for a decade, and this has been interesting theater, if nothing else. And it's something that I think every Seahawks fan is going to see be interested in seeing play out, even if it doesn't really have anything to do with us anymore. So from that perspective, this is interesting, right? Because we know about the dead money part of it. We know how much money the Broncos are going to have to eat to move off of him, but they're doing it anyway. $85 million split over the next two seasons, 35 this year, 49 the next year. So it's quite something for things to have played out this way. Basically, the biggest disaster in recent memory in terms of blockbuster trades. Him and Deshaun Watson kind of right next to each other, I guess you could say. And watching this play out as a Seahawks fan, that first year we were really interested, right? Because of the draft pick capital. We had the first and the second from Denver, so we really were invested for objective reasons. Second year, not so much. This year, not so much. I've only made a couple of Russell Wilson videos over the last 6 months or so, because once we were done with the draft picks, it wasn't really anything to do with us. I made a video when he got benched. I made a video when the Broncos started the season miserably, and it looked like maybe we would regret not getting a third first round pick in that trade instead of the 2 seconds. Other than that, I haven't really had a lot to say about it because it ceased to really be about the about anything the Seahawks would really care about. We had the third round pick factor this year, but that was a very, very minor thing in the grand scheme of things, to where I just briefly discussed it every week during the rooting guide, and that's about it. So I just felt obligated to say something here, because now that he's getting released, I mean, that's a monumental thing. I know we've expected it for months now. I'd say at least since Christmas, but it's still a monumental thing to happen to a player that means a lot to this organization. So we also had this statement. Aaron Wilson posted this from Russell Wilson, just saying thank you to Denver, thank you to the Broncos, shout out to player X, shout out to player Y. It's just a handful of paragraphs thanking everybody and talking about he's excited for what's next. And that's, I guess, the other element that could be dove into here. And I know some people are going to be chattering about this. I know that at least some people are going to be talking about, oh, do we bring him back? Do we bring him back to Seattle? I've already addressed this, but for a couple different reasons, the answer is absolutely not. For one, the guy is going, he's only going to trail off from here. He's at the age now where he's not suddenly going to get better. So there's no upside there. There's only downside. At best, you're getting the Russell Wilson that exists right now. And more likely, you're going to get a Russell Wilson that is slowly going to continue to diminish because the things that he can do continue to slip away from him. So that's just on the most basic of levels of dealing with an older quarterback. And we already have a quarterback that we financially committed to who has some of the same problems, but he has nowhere near the miles. So I don't know why we'd take on a situation that is going to be even more of a question mark for our quarterback position when we, by the way, already financially committed to that first option, Gino Smith. There is, I guess, an interesting scenario where you trade Gino Smith for a lot of draft capital and then you sign Russell Wilson, but I still don't see it. You guys got to understand that it didn't seem like it was Pete Carroll who drove the Russell Wilson trade initially. In fact, Pete Carroll seemed like he was the guy who was trying to prevent the trade. He blocked it in 2021, and he tried to prevent it in 2022, and eventually just gave into it. But by all accounts, John Schneider was the one who didn't want Russell Wilson anymore. By all accounts, John Schneider was the one who was advocating for a trade. John Schneider is still here, so Pete Carroll leaving does not mean that suddenly Wilson is free to come back and the person who didn't like him anymore is out of the building. And he's not even out of the building, but he's not in that head coaching role anymore. He's not head of personnel anymore. But if anything, it would have been the opposite scenario where if John Schneider got fired, Pete Carroll was still here, then a Russell Wilson reunion might be a little more likely, although I still think it's very unlikely. You also have the Ryan Grubb factor. I think Russell Wilson would be an unmitigated disaster in a Ryan Grubb offense the way we saw it work at Washington and Fresno State. I don't think he's going to be able to run that kind of an offense. I think there's a very specific offense that Russell Wilson needs to be able to run, and it's not going to be found here. I think that Ryan Grubb, when he's gonna in the NFL now, he's going to be using the middle of the field a lot, which Russell Wilson does not do. I don't think he's going to be leaning on the deep ball as heavily as he did with Penix, because that was Penix's strength, and I think that was something that Penix actually wanted to do more than Grubb. I think you're going to see an offense more in line with what you saw at Fresno State, using intermediate throws, using the middle of the field, and that's not really what Russell Wilson can still do. So I'm going to come down pretty firmly on the side of a reunion doesn't make sense. Although, if there is some dream trade out there for Geno Smith, which, by the way, at this point there clearly isn't, and you can get enough draft capital to make it worth your while to still pay Geno Smith $27 million this year, and then you're looking for a quarterback to start 2024, the interesting thing with Russell Wilson is that he's got an offset in his contract where any money that he makes from a team in 2024 comes out of the cap hit that Denver has to give him. So he has zero obligation, if I'm understanding correctly, to seek anything more than the veteran minimum, because the money he gets from another team is just coming out of the money that Denver's giving him. So if he got $10 million from a team, that would just be $10 million less that Denver gives him, to my understanding. And if that is correct, then yeah, you could get him for the veteran minimum. You could probably get him for less than you would even get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo for. So in that scenario, I guess you could say it's a little bit interesting. But it's DOA because I don't think that Geno Smith trade is out there. So this is just, hypothetical conversations that are already pretty much dead. The fact that John Schneider committed to Geno Smith for 2024 during the combine tells me he tried to poke around a little bit for a Geno Smith trade and didn't find anything he liked. So I think that's pretty much off the table. And yeah, I guess that's really about all I can say about all that stuff. I had to address it because I know people are going to be chattering about bring him back now that he's been let go by Denver. But for so many different reasons, I don't understand what the upshot of that is supposed to be. I don't know what the benefit of that is supposed to be. He's worse than the guy that we have right now. He's a little bit older. He's got way more miles on him. Even if he was younger, it doesn't make up for the fact that he's been beat up in a way that Gino Smith is not. So to me, bringing him back would just be for nostalgia. And while I can understand a nostalgia pickup on certain players, like Frank Clark, starting quarterback is very different than that. Like, you don't want to mess around at the starting quarterback position. No matter how much some people do kind of want to use 2024 as a throwaway season, which is what the season would be if we brought Russell Wilson in. It would just be like, let's just win 6 games because he's not very good anymore and he doesn't fit this offense. Mike McDonald doesn't want to put that on his record. Again, this isn't Madden. This isn't Madden where you just throw away your first season to tank for picks. So this team is going to try to win as much as they can in 2024. And Russell Wilson is not conducive to winning anymore. He has 3 straight seasons with a losing record. So unless you want to lose, I don't really know why you'd want to bring him in. So, yeah, it's a crazy day. But then again, it's not, right? It's crazy because the Broncos are taking on an $85 million cap hit just to tell Russell Wilson to go away. But it's not crazy because we knew this is where this was going. Because we've been paying attention to stuff lately. As for a landing spot for Russell Wilson, I'm kind of feeling the Raiders. I don't think it's going to be the Steelers anymore. I think the Falcons are trading for Fields. I think those teams in the top 3 are going to be drafting a quarterback. I think that you got J.J. McCarthy rocketing up draft boards. He's going to go to a team that needs a quarterback. And I feel like you got Cousins and Mayfield out there that are going to fill a couple of these open spots. So I think the Raiders are going to be kind of the team that is left. And honestly, if they don't take him, I don't know if there is a landing spot. Russell Wilson needs to run a very specific kind of offense. There are only so many teams out there that are going to be interested in trying to run that. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Got some things going on today. Probably going to hold off on the final combine videos until tomorrow. Maybe later today, maybe late today, maybe sometime in the late afternoon, but probably not going to get to that until tomorrow at this point. I just wanted to make a video about this because it's, I know people are going to be buzzing about this, just like people are buzzing about the KJ Wright thing right now, which, just real quick, the KJ Wright thing, I'm not going to make a whole video about that. He took a job with the Niners. Guys, let him be. Let him be. I know people are freaking out about it. We already had a linebacker coach. We already had an assistant linebacker coach. We did not have room on our coaching staff for him. We have no idea what kind of coach he's going to be anyway. We don't know if he's going to be good. He has no connection to Mike McDonald, by the way. The only guy he has any connection to on this staff anymore is Carl Scott, and Carl Scott's a DB coach, so probably not even there. So we had already picked our linebacker coach. What are we going to do? Tell our assistant linebacker coach to beat it a couple weeks after we hire him? I don't think so. Let KJ Wright be. He's going under Nick Sorensen in San Francisco. And that's a Pete Carroll disciple, so he's got a little bit of a connection there, and we'll see what he does from here. But leave him be, okay? This isn't like Richard Sherman going to the 49ers. This is totally different. He's got to go where there's actually an opening for him to work, where it makes sense for him to work, where he's got some kind of roots. And I know he doesn't have roots in San Francisco, but he's got roots with Nick Sorensen. So that's my thoughts on KJ Wright. Let the man be. Worry about stuff that actually matters. KJ Wright, not something that matters. Good for him. He's getting a job in the NFL. Maybe down the line, we'll bring him in as a linebacker coach if he does well in Frisco. But he's got to start somewhere. And it's not that simple to just say, okay, I'm going to go coach where I played. I don't know why he would, right? Mike McDonald never coached KJ Wright, did he? Aiden Durd never coached KJ Wright, right? Kirk Olivadotti never coached him. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Got some stuff to do, but I'll be back online later tonight, one way or the other.